You feel emotionally exhausted because your heart has been through too much. You are not emotionally exhausted because you are weak. You are exhausted because your heart has been carrying pain for too long without rest. Some people watching this learned how to survive while silently breaking inside. You kept showing up for people. You kept pretending you were okay. You kept smiling through disappointment, betrayal, stress, and emotional pressure nobody truly understood. And now something feels different. You feel drained even after resting. Small problems feel heavier than before. Your mind never fully relaxes. Your soul feels tired all the time. This is what happens when a person spends too much time being strong for everyone else while secretly losing strength inside. Most emotional pain does not destroy people immediately. It happens slowly. One disappointment after another. One silent heartbreak after another. One emotional burden after another. Until one day your heart no longer feels safe. And the dangerous part is that most people around you cannot see it. They think you are fine because you still function. They think you are strong because you stay quiet. But deep inside, your soul has been overwhelmed for a long time. Some people are not lazy. They are emotionally overloaded. Some people are not losing faith. They are losing emotional energy after surviving too many painful seasons without healing. But what if this exhaustion is not happening by accident? What if your soul is reaching a moment where healing can no longer be ignored? Because in the next part, you are going to understand why emotionally exhausted people often suffer in silence, and why the strongest hearts usually carry the deepest hidden pain. The invisible pain people don't see. One of the most painful things about emotional exhaustion is that nobody notices it at first. People see you working, talking, smiling, helping others, but they do not see the pressure building inside your heart every single day. Some of the most emotionally exhausted people are the ones who stay available for everyone else while silently falling apart inside. You became the listener, the dependable one, the strong one people call during difficult moments. But who was there for you when your soul became heavy? You learned how to hide emotional pain because life taught you that nobody slows down long enough to notice it, so you carried everything quietly. Family pressure, disappointment, loneliness, emotional wounds you never fully talked about. And after a while, your heart stopped expecting comfort. That is why emotional exhaustion feels so dangerous. It does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like losing motivation slowly, feeling disconnected from people, feeling tired before the day even begins, feeling emotionally numb while trying to act normal. Many people are not emotionally exhausted because of one painful moment. They are exhausted because they survived too many painful moments back to back without healing in between. And eventually, the soul reaches a limit. You stop feeling emotionally safe. You stop trusting easily. You stop believing peace will last, because life trained your heart to expect another disappointment. But there is something important you need to understand. Just because people cannot see your emotional pain does not mean God cannot see it. He sees the silent battles. He sees the nights you stayed awake thinking about everything you never say out loud. He sees the emotional weight you carry behind your smile. And in the next part, you are going to discover what happens when emotional pain changes the way your heart experiences life itself. The moment the heart stops feeling safe. There comes a moment when the heart changes after too much emotional pain. Not suddenly. Quietly. You stop opening up the same way. You stop trusting peace. You stop believing good moments will last. Because every time life hurt you, your heart learned to stay alert instead of staying calm. This is how emotional exhaustion slowly takes control of a person. Your body may still be functioning, but your soul stays in survival mode all the time. You overthink conversations. You expect disappointment before anything even happens. You prepare yourself emotionally for bad news constantly. Even during peaceful moments, your mind struggles to rest because your heart no longer feels safe. And many people never realize this is happening to them. They think they are just tired. But deep inside, they are emotionally guarding themselves from more pain. That is why emotionally exhausted people often isolate themselves. Not because they hate people, because their heart became tired of carrying emotional weight nobody understands. You can only stay strong for so long before your soul starts asking for help. Some people watching this have been surviving emotionally for years without real healing. You became independent because you had to. You became emotionally distant because disappointment became familiar. You became mentally exhausted because your mind never learned how to feel safe again. And slowly, hope became harder to hold on to. But this is the part most people never hear. God does not ignore exhausted hearts. Sometimes the breaking point is the exact place where healing finally begins. Sometimes God allows the soul to become weary because He knows you cannot continue carrying hidden wounds forever. And in the next part, you are going to understand why some painful seasons are not destroying you, but exposing emotional wounds that heaven wants to heal before they consume your life completely. Why God allows the weary season. One of the hardest questions emotionally exhausted people ask is this: why would God allow me to feel this broken for so long? Because when your heart has carried too much pain, silence starts feeling confusing. You pray, but still feel tired. You try to stay faithful, but your soul feels heavy. You keep fighting internally while nobody around you understands how exhausted you truly are. But not every painful season is meant to destroy you. Some seasons expose wounds you kept hiding even from yourself. For years, you may have survived emotionally without actually healing. You learned how to continue living while carrying unresolved pain inside your spirit. And eventually, God allows the exhaustion to become impossible to ignore. Not because He abandoned you, because He refuses to let your soul keep suffering in silence forever. Sometimes emotional exhaustion is the warning sign that your heart has been bleeding internally for too long. God sees the pain nobody talks about, the betrayal you never recovered from, the pressure that slowly drained your peace, the emotional loneliness hidden behind your daily routine. And while people judge your exhaustion from the outside, heaven understands the weight you have been carrying internally. Many strong people reach a moment where they can no longer pretend everything is okay. And strangely, that moment becomes the beginning of transformation. Because healing usually starts when the soul becomes honest about its pain. God cannot heal the version of you that keeps pretending to be fine. That is why some weary seasons feel so uncomfortable. God is exposing emotional wounds you buried under responsibility, fear, disappointment, and survival mode. And maybe this exhaustion is not proof that God left you. Maybe it is proof that your soul is finally reaching the moment where real healing can begin. Because in the next part, you're going to recognize the hidden signs that your soul has been crying for healing much longer than you realized. The signs: your soul is crying for healing. Sometimes the soul asks for healing long before the mind realizes something is wrong. You start feeling emotionally distant from everything. Things that once brought peace no longer affect you the same way. Conversations feel exhausting. Your patience becomes shorter. Even small problems suddenly feel overwhelming. And deep inside, you know this is more than stress. Your soul is tired. One of the clearest signs of emotional exhaustion is constantly feeling mentally heavy, even during quiet moments. You finally sit down to rest, but your thoughts never stop moving. Your body slows down, but your mind keeps fighting invisible battles. Another sign is emotional numbness. You stop reacting the way you used to. Not because you no longer care, but because your heart became overloaded after carrying too much pain for too long. Some people also begin isolating themselves without realizing it. You stop explaining what you feel because nobody seems to fully understand it. You become quieter, more emotionally guarded, more disconnected from people around you. And perhaps the most painful sign is this: you secretly wish someone would notice how much you are struggling without you having to say a single word. Because emotionally exhausted people become tired of explaining their pain. They become tired of pretending they are okay, tired of carrying invisible pressure, tired of surviving emotionally while trying to appear strong externally. But your soul was never created to live under constant emotional weight without restoration. Even strong hearts need healing. Even faithful people become weary. Even those who trust God can reach moments where their spirit feels overwhelmed. And the dangerous part is that if emotional exhaustion stays ignored for too long, hopelessness slowly begins entering the mind. That is why in the next part you are going to understand the dangerous lie emotionally exhausted people slowly begin believing, and how that lie silently steals peace, hope, and faith from the heart. The dangerous lie exhausted people believe. Emotional exhaustion changes the way a person sees life. After carrying pain for too long, the mind slowly starts believing things that are not true. You begin thinking nobody truly cares. You start believing you have to carry everything alone. You convince yourself that peace will never fully return again. And the longer emotional exhaustion continues, the more dangerous those thoughts become. Because hopelessness rarely enters loudly. It enters quietly. It appears through constant overthinking, through emotional heaviness, through the feeling that life will always stay difficult no matter how hard you try. Some people stop expecting happiness because disappointment became too familiar. Others stop opening their heart because betrayal changed the way they trust people. And eventually, exhaustion starts attacking identity itself. You no longer recognize the peaceful version of yourself. You no longer feel emotionally connected to who you used to be. You start surviving day by day instead of truly living. This is why emotional exhaustion is not just mental. It becomes spiritual too. Because the enemy does not always destroy people through chaos. Sometimes he slowly drains their hope until they emotionally surrender to heaviness. He wants you to believe your situation will never change. He wants you to think healing is impossible. He wants you to feel abandoned in your suffering. But those thoughts do not come from God. God does not speak hopelessness over exhausted souls. He does not shame people for feeling weary. He does not ignore broken hearts struggling silently behind closed doors. In fact, some of the people God restored most deeply in Scripture were emotionally overwhelmed before healing reached them. And maybe the reason this message found you today is because your soul needed a reminder that exhaustion is not your final identity. You are not beyond restoration. You are not forgotten. And your heart is not too damaged for God to rebuild. Because in the next part, you are going to discover the truth emotionally exhausted people desperately need to hear when they feel like they can no longer carry the weight alone. God never asked you to carry this alone. One of the biggest mistakes emotionally exhausted people make is believing they must survive everything by themselves. You became so used to carrying pain quietly that asking for help started feeling uncomfortable. You kept telling yourself to stay strong, keep moving, keep enduring. But the human soul was never created to carry endless emotional weight without rest. That is why your spirit feels exhausted now. Not because you failed, because you have been fighting internal battles for too long without allowing yourself to heal. Some people learned strength through survival. You became independent because nobody was there during your hardest moments. You learned how to hide emotional pain because vulnerability once hurt you deeply. But God never asked you to suffer in silence. In the book of Matthew, chapter 11, verses 28 through 30, Jesus speaks directly to weary people. He says to come to him when life becomes heavy, not when you are perfect, not when you have everything together, when you are tired. That invitation still matters today. God is not waiting for you to pretend you are strong enough to handle everything alone. He is waiting for you to stop carrying burdens your soul can no longer survive without healing. And many emotionally exhausted people struggle with this because they think surrender means weakness. But surrender is not weakness. Surrender is honesty. It is the moment you finally admit your heart needs restoration. The moment you stop hiding pain behind constant strength. The moment you allow God to enter the places inside you that exhaustion has damaged for years. Because healing does not begin when the pain disappears. Healing begins when the soul stops pretending it is unaffected by the pain. And in the next part, you are going to understand how God can rebuild emotionally exhausted hearts and restore the parts of you that life slowly wore down over time. Powerful spiritual reframe. Many people say pain makes you stronger, but sometimes pain makes you tired first, guarded, emotionally distant, mentally overwhelmed. And if we are honest, some seasons do not feel empowering while you are living through them. They feel heavy, confusing, lonely, because emotional exhaustion changes the way a person experiences life. You stop feeling safe emotionally. You stop trusting peace completely. You stop expecting things to get better. But this is where God begins changing the story. Because God does not only restore strength, He restores the broken places pain created inside the heart, the parts of you that became fearful, the parts of you that became emotionally closed, the parts of you that slowly lost hope after too many disappointments. And sometimes the very thing you thought was destroying you becomes the moment God starts rebuilding you differently. Not weaker, not bitter, but deeper, more spiritually aware, more emotionally honest, more dependent on God, instead of constantly pretending you can survive everything alone. The exhausted version of you is not the final version of you. God can restore peace inside a mind that has been overwhelmed for years. He can heal emotional wounds nobody else knows about. He can rebuild confidence after betrayal. He can bring rest back into a soul that has been carrying invisible pain for too long. And maybe this season is not proof that your life is falling apart. Maybe it is the moment God is removing the emotional weight your heart was never meant to carry forever. Because sometimes God allows the soul to become weary, so a person finally stops surviving and starts healing. And in the final part, we are going to pray over the emotional exhaustion, the hidden pain, and the silent battles that have been draining your heart for far too long. Emotional prayer and final activation. God, you see every exhausted heart listening right now. You see the silent pain they never talk about. You see the emotional weight they carry behind their smile. You see the nights they stayed awake trying to stay strong while internally falling apart. Some of them have been emotionally tired for so long that they no longer remember what peace feels like. Their soul feels overwhelmed. Their mind feels heavy. Their heart feels worn down after too many painful seasons. But today, let this moment become the beginning of healing. Bring rest to the minds that cannot stop overthinking. Bring comfort to the hearts that feel emotionally abandoned. Bring strength to the people who secretly feel like they cannot keep carrying this weight alone anymore. Heal the hidden wounds nobody else sees. Heal the disappointment. Heal the betrayal. Heal the emotional exhaustion that slowly stole their peace. Remind them they are not forgotten. Remind them they are not fighting alone. Remind them that even exhausted souls can be restored through your presence. In the book of Psalms, chapter 34, verse 18, it says that the Lord stays close to the brokenhearted. And for the person listening right now who feels emotionally overwhelmed, let those words become real again. Let peace enter the places where fear has been living. Let hope return to the heart that became tired of suffering silently. Let healing begin in the soul that has been carrying too much pain for too long. And if this message found you during one of the hardest emotional seasons of your life, maybe this is your reminder that your exhausted heart still deserves peace. Write "Healing begins today" in the comments if you are ready to let God restore the emotional strength your soul has been missing.